All right, so I would love to welcome Hilary to the Sasuga podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Hilary.
I am thrilled to be with you.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I have created a company called the Relaunch Company, and it's specifically designed for women, and it's really for the Gen X woman, right? The woman that is in that middle type of her life, and she's going through transitions. And
Mm-hmm.
so this company is really for women that potentially need a little guidance, need a little community, need a little support when sometimes those transitions seem a little bit larger than they want to try to go on their own. And what we do is we provide a really awesome place that they can come and learn how to perhaps take on those challenges and relaunch themselves in their business, in their life, and in their love life.
Oh, love life as well. When you talk about sort of Gen X-ish, what can you just be specific in terms of age range that you're thinking, just to make it clear for our
Yeah,
listeners?
it's pretty much, anywhere, and we really cover a little bit lower than Gen X, but our sweet spot is really around that early 40s to mid 50s.
Right. 40s to 50s. So, for our dear listener, and oh, by the way, for our viewers as well, because this is also on YouTube. So, for those of you who are listening and watching, if you're not at that age group yet, and if you're not female, I'm sure there are also going to be things that you can take from this, and lots of learning and loving what Hilary is going to be talking about. So, let's start off with a word of the year. This is something that I introduced at the very first episode of the Sasuga podcast this year. I shared my 3 words of the year. Do you have a word of the year, Hilary?
Well, first off, I love what you said, and I love how you have 3 words. And I pretty much have my 3 value words, but then my number 1 word for the year is courageous.
Oh,
And I love that one because if you look at the root of the word, the
mm,
COR, the core, which is from Latin,
mm-hmm.
it means heart.
Yeah.
And everything that the Relaunch Company stands for, everything that I stand for, is bringing that spark of love into absolutely everything you do. And so it
Oh.
just seemed like, you know what, if I can continue to focus on doing that in all areas of my life with courage,
Uh-huh.
with that, I'm all in, that I am not going to, I'm not going to have my fears creep up, because if I talk about the opposite of love is fear,
Mm-hmm.
I want people to embrace that idea that I am delivering the ability for you to be courageous in all areas of your life.
Oh, that is fantastic. And that is, one of our hot topics is confidence, right? So courageous and confidence. Can you give us an example of a time in your life where you felt that you weren't confident, but you now do have confidence?
That's a great question, because if I look at my career, I'm based in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area, and I grew up in the Silicon Valley working at Oracle in the corporate world for over 10 years. And so I was, one of those people that grew up in the big companies. And then I transitioned to starting to coach entrepreneurs and executives
Mm.
all around creating their companies. And then I
Mm.
decided to have this, even crazier idea of, I want to get into the digital space. I want to start offering to women the ability to take courses and to coach them digitally. So I would say the number one, challenge for me, and the thing that I've had to overcome, is that I understand technology when it has to do with software development,
Mm-hmm.
but this whole new world of digital
Mm.
and becoming a digital CEO,
Mm-hmm.
I've had to lean into this. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I am not trying to understand the technology, understand the marketing, understand something in the area. But when I first started out, it seemed like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to do this? And
Mm-hmm.
then I implemented small steps to get to this gigantic space that now I'm in. And now I look back, I'm like, gosh,
Mm.
where I was and where I am now, I now understand, and I'm now running a digital company.
Great. So it's by small steps and actually doing that you build the confidence.
Initially, it felt so overwhelming when
Mm-hmm.
I thought, how am I going to be able to do this? Me, I
Yeah.
mean, this isn't my background. This isn't what I'm used to. And, I love to have that, face to face in person. And now I'm doing it via computer, and it's
Mm.
totally a different world for me. But
Mm-hmm.
I started with super small steps, things
Mm-hmm.
that I could have small wins, just
Mm-hmm.
little teeny bitty wins. I'm going to learn how to create videos today, or I'm going to
Uh-huh.
learn how to actually set up my camera, go even smaller. I'm going to learn how to, actually set up Zoom. I mean, anything that I could do, I just started to back end into it, to say, all right, I'm going to be able to do this, but only if I take it one step at a time.
Right. And now, for us looking at you now or hearing you, you look and sound so confident when you are talking on camera. So what about the very first time that you did that? Did you have that level of confidence?
Absolutely not. And what's happened is that, you can't beat yourself up over not knowing what you don't know,
Mm,
right? I mean,
mm,
you can't be an expert in everything. And it sometimes is challenging when you go from being at least really confident in what you're doing. Like, I was very confident in the corporate world, and
mm.
then I was trying something brand new. And so there were times where, I mean, I stumbled. There were times where audio doesn't work, where, the camera didn't work, where, we had to just say, hey, this is not going well, and let's start over.
Mm,
But through all of the mistakes, you know, you get better. And I
mhm.
think that what's so great is that it showed who I really was, in the sense that sometimes we just ran with, we talk all the time about not being perfect and just going with 70%. If
Mhm.
you go and, even just Googling some of the initial relaunch, we called it relaunch love videos, they were, hey, I'm just delivering it. It looks very, scattered. The camera is not quite right. But eventually, we got to a much more, kind of, I guess that we would say it's a little more polished, yet now we
Mhm.
can have fun with it. Now we can start to do, there's a TV show of the past called I Love Lucy.
Oh, yeah.
And it was one that my mom always had on when I was a kid. And so I think about Lucille Ball, and I loved her, and I loved her goofiness, and
Mhm.
things never seemed to go right for her.
Mhm.
And her attitude around how she overcame them, it just makes me laugh. And so I think of, when things start to go wrong,
Yeah.
you have to lean into, all right, there's nothing, at this point, you're just going with it, especially
Yeah.
when that video starts to roll, right? You can't say, this is live right now. So
Right.
you can't rerun it and be like, okay, wait, back up, back up.
Yeah, just go with it and have fun with it as well.
You
That's
have to have fun, no doubt.
totally. And then you learn from it and yeah, just gets better and better. Love it. So what about then productivity? Because that's another hot
Mm.
topic. The women who are, who follow me, who I work with, many of them want to use their time and energy more efficiently. So what's a productivity tip that you have?
I would say the number one thing that has impacted me in my own productivity and keeping me focused is how I manage my calendar.
Mm.
And I do it a little differently than most. What I do is, if I'm going to put it on the calendar, one, I will color code it so that
Mhm.
I know, is this something that is personal? Is this something that is a revenue generating? Is this marketing? Is this partnerships? So I have it color coded, so I know where I'm spending most of my time, and I have buckets of, how much time I believe I should be spending in each area. But then as I'm putting it into the calendar, this is the key. I ask myself, why? What is my intention of putting that on there? What am I hoping to gain by putting that into my calendar? Because we all have 24 hours in a day. And, there are people that run one company, there's people that run 10 companies. And again, we all have the same amount of time. And we don't want to be, we want to have that, so-called harmony of life. And how do you do that? And the way I have done that is by asking the question, why? It then makes me focus on, one, should I even have this on my calendar? And two, if I'm putting something into the future, when I get to that appointment or that time block, I know why I'm doing it. I know, and I can ask myself at that moment, is this still relevant for me? Because how many times have you put something on your calendar a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, and you get there and you're like, I guess I'm just going to do it. I ask myself at that point, then the day before, when I look at my calendar, is this still relevant for what I'm trying to do? And then the next thing that I always do is I list out one thing in that appointment that when the time comes, I want to actually, not just the intention, the why behind it, but one thing that I can do to start the process. Because how many times have you put down something? I want to focus on creating a new course. And I'm going to, focus on it. I have a 2-hour block. And you get there and you're like, well, okay, I think I have 2 hours of free time now where I can do a whole bunch of other stuff and other things. Versus, okay, wait a second. I need to brainstorm for 15 minutes a concept that would be the most impactful for my clients. And that gets me in the mood. So when I finally see that appointment, I know what I'm going to be doing initially. So I'm not wasting time. And it goes back to that tiny habit. Yeah. And I talk about this all the time, small steps leading to massive change. Yeah. Well, how do you do that? Calendar it so that you actually have an intention and you know what you're going to focus on first.
Yeah. I love that. So having that sort of starting point. Was it Ernest Hemingway, the writer, who he used to finish his day halfway through a sentence, apparently, so that he knew where to start the next day?
It's brilliant. It's so great.
It's wonderful. Yeah. So with your building confidence through small steps and your productivity tips and what you're using there, I'm sure you've got a lot of results. I know you've got a lot of results in your life and your career so far. Can you tell us a little bit about some particular result that you are very happy about and how you managed to make that happen?
Yeah. So when I think about my life and the businesses that I have created as I go through my life, a lot of what I do and create are based around what's happening in my life at that time. And so when I created my security company to keep kids safe online, it's because I had 3 kids under the age of 13 that I felt needed to be safe. But then I became single. I got divorced, and I realized I really wanted to remain a working woman. I had a company at that time as well, and I was out there raising money for that company. And I realized that the biggest thing, I had my kids at home, I had my work, but I didn't have love. I didn't have love in my life. And I thought, I want to actually focus on it. And it was at that moment I decided, how about I take what I coach people in terms of developing a product, and I create myself as a product who wants to find love. And I put together in my own mind this process. Well, it worked so well that I actually ended up finding my absolute dream guy, and my husband, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
And after that happened, I decided to launch the relaunch company to help with steps associated with getting anything that you want in your life and
Mm-hmm.
relaunching yourself after
Mm-hmm.
these major transitions. So when you ask, something that has been just like a wow for me,
Mm.
it's I've had some really, really rough, awful things that have happened. My mom passed away a couple months ago, which, after a year-long battle with cancer. And I've been able to leverage the process that I've created, which is called the relaunch method. I've been able to use that in all areas of my life to get through these major relaunches and these major
Mm.
transitions, and then turning around and being able to help others
Mm-hmm.
get through divorce and get through, whether or not your kids are going off to college, or
Mm.
whether or not you're in a job that you're just feeling like I'm stuck, or
Mm-hmm.
any area of your life. It's just, these things happen to us, right? We have wrinkles because we've been on this planet,
Mm-hmm.
a while, and we've
Mm-hmm.
learned the wisdom. And so I
Mm.
really feel blessed that from that moment of like, gosh, the light bulb went out, because I don't, or went on, not out, went on. I really feel like at this point, anything and everything will come at me, right? It does. It
Mm-hmm.
comes at you, it comes at everybody.
Yeah.
But the foundation that I have developed, I can get through. I can
Yeah.
get through. I think I can get through virtually anything. I'm not going to say absolutely, because at this point, until it's actually happened, but I have to say it's been it's been a very interesting, especially 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. How you you just, as you're talking, you're giving everybody so much hope
Mm,
for whatever situation they're in. I think everybody has something in life that's a struggle. It could be something that's like really big, significant, and it
mhm.
could even be just like a buildup of lots of tiny little things. But just having
Absolutely.
that hope and knowing that when you decide, you can do something about it.
Well, and it's interesting when you start to talk about love,
Yeah.
and where love comes from. And right now there's this wonderful surgence of everybody focused, or not everybody, but a majority of people that are starting to realize the importance of meditation, and the importance of, mind shifts and subconscious
Yeah.
things. But what we sometimes forget is that between that brain and our heart, it's
Mm-hmm.
18 inches, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we let the 6 inches between our ears get in the way of
Mm-hmm.
connecting the
Mm-hmm.
head to the heart.
Right.
And what we want to be able to do is allow that to be this open pathway,
Mm-hmm.
and to not have, all of these, hey, the Y in the road, go right, go
Mm-hmm.
left. Let's
Mm-hmm.
have a straight shot. Why do
Mm-hmm.
we have to have it be so circuitous? Why do we have to keep repeating past mistakes, keep
Mm-hmm.
repeating things over and over? And you say, God, I feel like this is, there's, the hamster on the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
Groundhog Day,
Mm-hmm.
repeating over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it becomes so important that if you can, and I love what you're doing for women in general, women everywhere, but we have to be tying the idea of mindfulness
Mm-hmm.
with that love in your
Mm-hmm.
heart, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's so much, I think, I see the female clients that I'm working with, actually not just the female clients, the male clients too, and the people in my online communities as well. And there's so much kind of talking to you. So this is, the big thing about communication. I started off with how do we communicate effectively with others, but a lot of it is how we communicate with ourselves, and then the stories we're telling ourselves that get in the way from really, feeling that love for what you want to do, the direction you want to go in, and those conversations with ourselves that are holding us back.
Absolutely. And Helen, when you start to look at, the self-critic,
Yeah.
right? The one that's just in there, that's just, I love the voices that we have in our head, right? We have the dreamer voice, you can do this, and yeah, this is what we want, and the big vision. And then you've got the realist, and then you've got the critic.
Right.
And it's this three-ring circus inside your head.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, it's run amok. Everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And what we want to be able to do is say, all right, we love the dreamer,
Hmm.
but the realist of being able to get things done and to
Yeah.
move things forward,
Yeah.
those are the voices we want to count on. And
Yeah.
so we have to silence, we have to be able to know when that critic, when that voice is getting in our way, and put the boxing gloves on and say
Yeah.
no more.
I love it. I actually, that's the first time I've heard of it described as the three voices. So I've
Mm,
heard of it a lot of the time, the critic, or your inner critic and your inner mentor. But I love this concept of the three voices. And I can certainly see that with myself, because I know in the past, the critic was so strong. And then I learned to kind of like stop listening to the critic, but then my dreamer voice just went out of control. It's like, I can do this, and I can
absolutely.
do this, and I can do this. And now I'm learning a little bit more balance of, okay, what do we, we need to be realistic about things as well, but also embracing the positives that the dreamer brings too.
Absolutely.
What
So
about
we
for
got
you?
it. We got to get the three-ring circus under control.
Right. So how are you feeling about your dreamer and your realist and your inner critic?
So, it's interesting because the inner critic, we're human. We're
Hmm.
always going to have that. That's how we are programmed. You can't get away from that, but what you can do is learn how to quiet it,
Yeah.
how to acknowledge it, and be able to say, "Yep, I know that, but
Hmm.
why am I thinking that way? What's
Hmm.
the real reason? Okay,
Hmm.
you're trying to protect me. You're trying to make sure that I don't get hurt. But now the realist comes in and says, okay, but we're not going to get hurt. We're going to try something new. We're going to create something new." And
Hmm.
I love the idea that, again, along the lines of these small steps, that, the reason that you can say to your critic, hey, we don't need to get so nervous and worry because I'm only doing this small step. I'm not trying to go from point A to Z.
Hmm.
I'm saying I'm going to go from, I know I want to get to Z. Hello,
Hmm.
dreamer.
Hmm.
Dreamer saying, but, but I am now going to realistically take one small step to get there.
Yeah.
And that's how you really calm the craze that goes on with the circus.
Right. I love it. I love it. And so this theme of love is really important for you in your life. Yeah.
So love is really at the root of everything.
Hmm.
And what we really have to be thinking is, have you lost the spark? Have you
Mm.
lost the spark in your work life? Have you lost the spark in your
Mm.
relationships? And it's not just, love is so much bigger than the love of a man or the love of a woman.
Mm.
It's that inner love
Mm.
that then once you create it, there's a great, I love using this example, tuning forks when you're
Oh
in the
yeah.
world, tuning forks. And when they're on the same vibration,
Hmm.
they are, they're moving in the same way. But
Hmm.
when you're off, they don't work together. And
Hmm.
so when you start to think about two people that are coming together with
Hmm.
love,
Mm.
they have their heartbeats start to beat in the same. There's all these wonderful things that come when you are in alignment and when
Hmm.
you're not.
Mm.
So imagine, and this is what happens to so many, you're a working, woman, you've been successful in some area of your business life, and your personal life is in shambles.
Mm.
And so you're now saying, gosh, I'm feeling great about my career,
Mm.
but I don't have love in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to go down that path of, all right, so how do I get love in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the fastest way to do it, right? Because we're not getting any younger. And I want you to have love in your life as fast as possible, because I know
Uh-huh.
how amazing it can be for the other areas of your life. And so
Mm.
what I want to make sure you're doing is getting that self-love
Uh-huh.
as soon as possible. And there are steps to
Ah,
get that self-love. And then you go into, all right, now that I have this self-love, now that I
right.
understand, I got that foundation, that core foundation that is so strong. Now, how do I make sure that I have that in my health, my nutrition, I love when I relaunch women in fashion, in
Mm-hmm.
beauty, I love what you've done, this metamorphosis of,
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful woman that has just continued like a butterfly. You're just constantly evolving. But I want to make sure that we all realize that if you look at what a butterfly does, right, it goes from this caterpillar stage where
Mm-hmm.
it's actually eating, right? It's eating in a totally different way. And then it goes into the cocoon, and then it comes out, and then it's eating in a totally different way. So you talk about change,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about the significance of, and for some butterflies, they live 2 weeks, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want to do is understand that we may always be evolving,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we should. And that sometimes our past, like I have women who come to me who are in the process of getting divorced, and they say, well, when I was in my 20s, this is what I did. This is,
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh, I love this. I love wearing this when I was in my 20s. And they
Mm-hmm.
think, go back and grab that. I say rebrand yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Relaunch yourself as who you want to be from this point forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a metamorphosis of all of the teens, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. I mean, you are an accumulation of all this. I coach men as well, and
Mm.
men that are powerhouses who are selling their companies for hundreds of millions of dollars, and they go and they sell the company, and they're now in a point where, what do you do next?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that breaking down their identity of who they had to be over the
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
and then creating who they want to be. And sometimes that's incredibly challenging, because you can't stay in that past identity.
Right.
That identity is gone. It's
Exactly.
not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that identity is only going to bring you those same results. So you got to look at changing the identity.
Right.
Definitely. I love it. So starting with the self-love, love, having an identity that you do love, and then bringing the love into other areas of your life, so that it spreads and grows.
It does. And it's people say, love is an overused word. And I think of love as the most underused, underrated word out there.
Right.
And it's something that we should be focused on. It's something that we have somehow, yeah, especially women, that when you sit there, I love when I work with women and they say, I love my job, I
Mm-hmm.
love it, I love what I'm doing.
Mm.
But I got to tell you, how infrequently do I hear that?
Yeah.
And when I have people come to me and they say, Hilary, I really want to 2020 is the year that I want to find a man.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, okay, great, let's talk, let's get clear on what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
First thing out of their mouth, well, what I don't want is dot dot dot.
Right.
And then I'll say, okay, let me back up for a second. How are you doing with your work? And what would you want in your perfect, the perfect job? What would
Mm-hmm.
it look like? What I don't want,
Yes.
it's just, we've got to change from that. What I don't want to, what I'd love?
Yes.
I'd love a job where I can, I can impact thousands of women and bring love into their lives and
Mm-hmm.
have them have the most incredible next chapter. That's where the passion comes from. That's where it's like, oh, it's so great.
Yeah, well, you know, I love my job. I love it so much.
Yes.
um, so we're recording this before Valentine's Day, but our plan is hopefully to be releasing in the week of Valentine's Day. So since we're talking about love, I thought that'd be quite interesting to just touch upon, because you know, we're in Japan. A lot of the listeners are in Japan, where we have an interesting approach to Valentine's Day. I don't know if you know what it's
No,
like
tell me more.
here. Okay, so, and then you can share about what it's like in the States so that people can hear the difference. Because I was very surprised when I first came to Japan. So Valentine's Day, traditionally here in Japan, is when the woman gives a gift to the man. Not the other way around. It's the woman to the man. So there's that concept, but there's
I
also
love that.
something that's called giri choco, and giri is obligation, and choco is chocolate. So it's like you give chocolate to your boss, and you give your male boss, and you give chocolate to your male colleagues, or like you make cookies or whatever. And so it's all about the woman giving things to the guy on Valentine's Day.
So what I want to know is which man created this.
Exactly. And isn't it like, it's I'm sure it's a guy from a chocolate company who had this just genius idea. Like, this is a great marketing idea, because, you know, there's so much chocolate, you know, not just the love chocolate, but the giri chocolate, the obligation chocolate that is sold at Valentine's Day. But there's more, Hilary, there's more, because it's not only that, because then March 14th is known as White Day. White Day is when all the guys who received something must return it to the women. And the general rule is supposed to be it's about 3 times the value of what you received.
No way.
Yes.
Okay, this is
Yeah.
getting fascinating.
So this is like, what a great marketing ploy that was. I don't know. I would love to, I actually haven't researched, but I'd love to know who came up with this amazing idea of White Day, because this is not something, just for people listening and watching in Japan, White Day, as far as I know, does not exist in any other country.
Honestly, I've never heard of that before. I think it is so interesting, as said, because it must be the marketing behind it is brilliant. I mean,
Yeah. But yeah, it's great. So tell us a little bit about the in the States. What is the Valentine's Day
and
that you
okay,
know?
so I would say in the States, it's the restaurants have played a huge marketing coup here, because what it is one of the hardest days to get a reservation anywhere, right?
Right.
Because, you know, my gosh, what it is that men and women, you go out to dinner that night. And then usually Valentine's is definitely a woman's holiday in the US.
Not here.
The man, yeah, no, I'm hearing that. The man is definitely, you know, under pressure. I would say that I haven't found a guy out there that I've talked to that's like, I love that day. No, because there's so much pressure on him to deliver. You know, we've got the flowers, we've got the chocolate, we've got the love notes, we've got the dinner. I mean, it is responsibility upon responsibility of what you have to do. And then the way the media and the way now with social, you know, posting and making sure that you put everything, you know, that you have received during that time period. Well, then if the guy doesn't plan ahead, you can't get in anywhere.
Right.
You can't get into any restaurant. So it really is. But I have to say, I love the idea that there is one day where we focus on love, that we actually, you know, I love love. I want people to, as a takeaway, as an action, think about that Valentine's is not just about a one day in your entire year, but how can you multiple times during the day think about giving love? Think about like all of the small acts of kindness that you can do that represent love. And that's when, you know, I start to think about just like a snowstorm, and it's all it's all the hearts and it's all the love that, is around you, and just reaching out, grabbing something, and then knowing that you got to give that little piece of love
Mm-hmm.
times a day. And guess what happens? What you give, you get.
Yeah.
And so what I have seen for women that are truly stuck, and they, kind of like, they've lost hope with love, I say, all right, 5 times a day, 5 times a day for
Mm-hmm.
7 days, you're going to give love.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do those small acts of kindness. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to call that person. You're going to acknowledge someone. You're going to do something nice.
Mm-hmm.
And as you give more of this genuine love from yourself, and it can be to men, it can be women, it can be children, it can be animals,
Mm-hmm.
then you start to create more of it. And it is the most incredible thing when you start to realize that, oh my gosh, there is something to
Mm-hmm.
be said about what happens with love and the high frequency,
Mm-hmm.
because it's, one of the highest levels in
Mm-hmm.
terms of all frequency is that love.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the ability to give it,
Mm-hmm.
but yet we're being stingy,
Mm-hmm.
and we're saying, A, we're too tired to give.
Mm-hmm.
B, you're saying, I don't know how to do it. And C, you're thinking, does it really matter? And I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
in all counts, yeah, try it.
Mm-hmm.
Try doing it. Try giving a little bit of love. And
Mm-hmm.
I get, some people that come and work with me at the very start, they're like, oh my gosh, love, can I just try just being nice? And I say, no, go to the opposite of fear. Go to the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of fear and give as much as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Radiate, radiate with that love. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when you talk about, what you do so beautifully, and helping people with, their communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not operating from that place of love,
Mm-hmm.
you're communicating in a lower level, which means
Yeah.
that you're not potentially getting as much back. Why wouldn't you want to give more?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. So I think that's a great way to start wrapping up our conversation today. I feel inspired. I want to go out and give more love to everybody. I'm meeting up with one of my team members for lunch, so I'll be giving her some love.
Good. Give her love. I love
Yeah,
that.
wonderful. So what else do you want to share with our listeners and viewers today?
So I would say the other big thing is, we as human beings, we have to have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't have that connection, when we isolate ourselves, um, it becomes the opposite place of that big love,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of growing that big love that I'm talking about. And so it becomes very important to, when you start to notice this, that you are feeling stuck, that you might be feeling frustrated, that you have lost hope,
Mm-hmm.
start to take those small steps to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how can you get back out there and connect,
Mm-hmm.
and to give these small pieces of love of yourself. And that's where you will absolutely, I mean, I've seen it over and over. So get your notepad out and just, put that big heart on that pad and just say, this is your year. This is
Mm-hmm.
the year of big love for you.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And if you listen to the first episode of this year, for everybody, connect is one of my words. So connect with me. Tell me what you're, how you're sharing your love and what you love from this episode as well. How can people find out more about you, Hilary?
So you can follow us on Instagram, The Relaunch Co. You can follow us also on Facebook, Relaunch Love. And we are February 14th launching our first membership group called the Relaunch Collective.
Oh, I love it. I
I'm
love
excited
it.
about it. And it's
So
really to help
exciting.
women find, that spark in all areas of their life. Again, my background is business, and I get the, showing up as very masculine in business,
Yeah.
and trying to bring out that femininity. And this is all very important to be wrapping yourself around this concept of really at the core is, that self-love, and that will impact all areas of your life.
Wonderful. So we'll link to all of that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Hilary. It's been just an inspiration, a pleasure. I have loved it.
Oh, Helen, I love you. You are wonderful, and all of your women and men that follow you, they are very lucky to have somebody like you coaching and guiding them.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.